So from the short notice he gave me, it's not really perfect. It's the best I can do. Hope you're happy with it.
Thanks, bud.
No problem.
If you're gonna review Batman vs. Superman, you gotta review it with a Batman voice.
So tell me, movie, do you bleed? You will.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Batman vs. Superman was a film fans have been asking for years, but Warner Brothers for some reason thought the idea of these two icons meeting up would have just been too confusing for mass audiences to follow. There was a point where both a Superman and a Batman movie were coming out near each other. Fans begged for a crossover, and what did DC do? They tossed a stupid joke into I Am Legend, almost like they were saying, "You'll get your Batman-Superman film, nerds, when the world ends." But I'm not entirely convinced that the world hasn't already ended, so maybe they were accurate with that. But then Marvel came along and formed the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and DC was all, "What? You can have two movies exist in the same universe and not confuse people?" Thus, DC decided to throw their hat into the ring and finally give us the crossover comic book fans wanted. Unfortunately, it's not really that great of a film. I mean, it's not bad, it's definitely worth seeing at least once, but this film has so many flaws. I don't even know where to begin, what to discuss. I guess the best place to start is with the characters. This film has three main characters: Batman, Superman, and Lex Luthor. No, Lois Lane is not a main character, she's a side character the film is desperately trying to find a reason to include in this film. Get her out of there! Good. Let's talk about these three main characters and break down what works and what doesn't. Let's start with Batman, the least suckiest of the three. There is actually a lot to like with this Batman. The costume is cool, the Batmobile is cool, I like how he fights, I like how he's actually portrayed as a kind of monster of the night. Not to mention Ben Affleck pretty much carries this film, and I would honestly say that he might be my favorite live-action Batman. Just look at this scene when Bruce hops out of the Batmobile, rips off his mask, and sulks at his computer. That is Batman! That's what he does! He slaves away fighting crime, only to return home exhausted so that he can brood. However, this film does kinda drop the ball with his Batman. Not with how he looks or how he's performed, but how he's written. I'm okay with this Batman being a bit more of a killer. There have been versions that lean more towards him doing that, and it's a version we haven't seen a lot of in cinema. Plus, I love the idea of him branding criminals. That's a really neat way of making Batman a threatening figure, while at the same time not directly dirtying his own hands. What I don't like, however, is the fact that Batman uses guns in this film. A gun killed his parents. It's the weapon that took everything from him. Whenever I see Batman popping a cap in people's skulls, I can't help but think back to the scene from the animated Under the Red Hood movie, when Red Hood tosses him a gun and tells him to use it. The way he looks at that pistol like it could have been the same one that took all of his happiness from him is such a powerful image. So him using guns seems like a bad idea to me. Wasn't the thing that made Batman cool the fact that he always had a better tool to use than a gun? I'm okay with a Batman who's more brutal when it comes to crime fighting, but guns are for the Punisher. Stick with the batarangs, Batboy. Now let's move on to our other lead, Superman, the Man of Steel. And what a fitting name, because he's about as interesting as staring at a steel wall. Batman is supposed to be the one who is always miserable and brooding. Superman is supposed to be the bright symbol of hope, an optimist. But there is absolutely none of that in this film. Every time Superman saves a life or does something heroic, he always looks like it's a chore. Like he doesn't even want to be there. A lot of the film is the world debating whether or not Superman can be trusted, which is great. I like that. But Superman never gets to share his side of the argument, because I get the feeling like the writers don't really care about his side of the argument. How hard would it have been to have Superman tell the court that he's here to help, and that even though he's made a few mistakes, it was all done with the best intentions during that trial scene? How hard would it have been to have Superman defend himself and his actions, and have the court debate on whether or not Superman deserves their trust before that bomb goes off. But no, Superman walks in, the senator sees a jar of pee, and boom goes the cripple. Nothing of substance. That's the main flaw with Superman in this film. He lacks substance. Ouch!
What the heck was that?
Testing, 1, 2, 3, testing. Huh, where was I? Oh, we have two main leads, Batman and Superman. Two iconic figures. But this film seems like it really isn't confident on what it wants to do with them. In the comics, the two are really strong allies, but both also have really different viewpoints on each other. If you ask Batman what he thought of Superman, he'd remark about how Superman is a naive Boy Scout who claims he can always be better but doesn't really seem to understand that humans don't have the luxury of being bulletproof, so he can't always do the things he thinks we're capable of. But Superman would make the argument that Batman is a pessimist, who isn't trying to inspire people to be better, and instead uses the excuse that he doesn't kill people to justify doing every horrible thing but. That's the main difference. Superman is a shining beacon of purity, who believes that criminals are still people, who lost their way and deserve to be treated as such. Batman views criminals as a cowardly lot, and while he doesn't kill people, he most certainly wouldn't be opposed to breaking bones or fingers if it meant they never hurt another person again. That is two interesting characters with two interesting and conflicting viewpoints. But how are these two characters portrayed in the film? They're exactly the same. Both are dark, depressing vigilantes who are willing to kill if the situation calls for it. It's not interesting seeing two similar people fight each other. Also, the fact that both characters are so similar makes both characters complete and total hypocrites. Batman gets pissed at Superman because he's reckless and dangerous. Yet Batman throughout the entire film is reckless and dangerous. Superman is mad at Batman because he's a brutal vigilante, yet Superman is also a brutal vigilante. Which of our two heroes are we supposed to root for? Where is the higher ground? Dang it!
Wait a minute. Did I tell him that the mask would short circuit if he was too loud? Man, whatever.
Okay. I think I'm gonna go the rest of the review without my Batman voice. I think I'm starting to smell my cheeks burn. Kinda smells like burnt bacon. Where were we? Oh yeah, the characters. So, now that we've talked about our heroes, let's talk about our villain. Whoo boy, what a colossal up this was. This version of Lex Luthor is lame. And no, don't tell me that, oh, it's not Lex Luthor, he's Lex Luthor Jr. His name is Lex Luthor, he does things that Lex Luthor would do, and he says things Lex Luthor would say, he's bald at the end of the film, this is supposed to be Lex Luthor. The only reason that dumb line was put into the film was because fans cried foul about Jesse Eisenberg's casting, so DC or Warner Brothers or somebody backpedaled and forced them to add that stupid line during the reshoots so they had an out in case it went south. And boy, did it ever go south. The idea of Lex Luthor being the main bad guy in Batman vs. Superman makes sense. He's a Superman villain, but Lex and Bruce actually have a lot in common. Both are rich billionaires who prefer to use underhanded tactics to get what they want. Both have big egos and are known for being stubborn when it comes to what they believe is right. And both enjoy flying on Turkish Airlines for some reason. So technically speaking, Lex Luthor as the villain makes sense. A good majority of everything that is wrong with this character is in the performance, and as much as I hate to say, that's mostly Jesse Eisenberg's fault. Some of the lines Lex Luthor says are something I could imagine him saying in the comics.
You're psychotic.
That is a three-syllable word for any thought too big for little minds.
Some of the things he does, I could see Lex Luthor doing. But Lex Luthor is supposed to be a smooth, suave, intelligent businessman, not a twitchy, eccentric nerd. I'd be willing to buy the fact the government would let Lex do experiments on Zod's body if he was a smooth-talking, suave, confident businessman like he is in the comics. But who in their right mind would give this Jolly Rancher eating, clearly off his meds dork the body of a dead alien to turn into a weapon. So 2 of our 3 main characters are seriously flawed, but the flaws really don't end there. This scene in the desert is stupid. This scene happens for only 2 reasons. 1, to give Lois Lane something to do on her little side quest, and 2, so the world can have a reason to put Superman on trial. But you don't need it. Lois doesn't need to be an important character to the plot. She's not a main character, and Superman should already be on trial for all the damage he did in Man of Steel, which the film had already set up through Bruce Wayne's eyes. I guess you could make the argument that Lex was manipulating things so the world would start to distrust Superman, but the world is already on the fence when it comes to Superman after he totaled a city with his bare hands. The biggest flaw with this film is that its editing is really off. When it comes to films, there is 2 types of editing, shot to shot and scene to scene. The shot to shot editing in this movie is fine. It's not like Suicide Squad, but that's a review for another time. The scene to scene editing in this film, however, is just bad. There is no flow. The story is a thin plot with a bunch of characters just kind of stumbling around until eventually the plot decides one of the characters can stumble to the place the writers want them to be at. Here's a good example of this. Batman wants the kryptonite so he can take the fight to Superman. He goes on a huge car chase to try and get it, but Superman gets in the way for no reason other than to tell him to hang up the cape and go home. The act of Batman getting the kryptonite moves the story forward. That's an important part of the actual story since that's what Batman intends to use to kill Superman. But instead of flowing from Batman discovering the kryptonite is at LexCorp and stealing it, or just giving Batman the kryptonite during the car chase, we have to deal with more Lois Lane crap, Clark talking with his mom, then the trial of Superman, and then finally we see Batman break into LexCorp and steal the kryptonite. I'm not saying those scenes aren't important, and I'm not saying these scenes shouldn't be in the film, but not in that order. These scenes don't lead into each other. There is no connective tissue. The main drive of the story at this point is Batman getting the kryptonite. Putting these scenes in the middle of that flowing story makes these scenes feel a little intrusive. One minute you're thinking you're watching one film, the next you're watching another. The dream sequence is the biggest offender when it comes to scenes that feel intrusive. You could cut this scene and lose nothing. We already know Batman doesn't trust Superman, so why do you need a dream sequence and a Flash cameo to show that, other than the fact that you want to foreshadow a completely different movie? Foreshadowing a different film does nothing to the film we're already watching. For the most part, I hate when Marvel does this, and I hate that DC is doing this as well. Okay, so all those flaws aside, is this film a bad movie? No. Kinda. A little. Well, there is some good stuff in it. Like I said, I really like Ben Affleck as Batman, but the direction of this film is also really good. The special effects mix very well with the live action, and there is some really iconic scenery. The movie looks really good. Zack Snyder is a great director when it comes to imagery, and this movie is no exception. There's tons of pretty shots in this movie. A lot of people blame Zack Snyder for this film, and I think that's kind of unfair. Zack did his job, and he did his job well. The film was made, and it looks good. It's not his fault the script he was given to work with was a total mess. I don't blame Zack Snyder for this. Oh no! I blame the writers, or perhaps maybe it was just one of the 2 writers this film had. Because it actually seems like someone writing this film actually had a lot of good ideas. The peach tea thing was clever, the set pieces and action scenes are nice, the occasional cool line shows up every now and then.
You're not brave. Men are brave.
Damn, that's a cool line. And you know what? I don't actually mind the Martha thing. Yeah, the whole Martha thing has kind of become a meme since this movie was released, and a lot of people hated it. And to some extent, I do too, but I do kind of see and understand and even kind of admire what they were trying to do with this scene. Batman has throughout the entire film thought of Superman as nothing more than a dangerous alien, a threat that needs to be destroyed. He doesn't think of Superman as a person, but instead thinks of him as a monster. But when Superman reveals that he has a mother and is only trying to save her from someone else, a mother with the same name Bruce's mother had, suddenly Bruce realizes that he's not attacking a mindless killer, he's attacking another human being. I get what the writers were trying to do here. The Martha thing was a decent idea, it was just executed incredibly poorly. There is very little foreshadowing to this pivotal moment. There is no build-up. It kind of comes out of nowhere. We never see Bruce interacting with his mom when he was a kid. We barely see Clark interacting with his mom. The film should have spent a little bit more time explaining why Bruce and Clark admire their mother so much. Maybe both of their moms tried to instill a similar moral into them when they were young, but they both took that moral a different way. I don't know, I feel like it could have worked. Maybe I'm wrong. If I am, I'll gladly bend over and take the ramming the internet will probably give me for liking this idea.
Why did you say that name?
It's his mother's name. It's his mother's name.
Did we just become best friends? Yep.
Anyway, this review has gone on longer than I expected, but I figured since liking or hating this film was such a big topic of conversation last year, it's only fair people know where I stand. Where do I stand? It's a pretty bad film, but it's not all bad. There is some good stuff in here. I like to think of this film as a piece of dog poo, but with a tiny gold nugget inside. Yeah, it's crap, but at least I got some good out of digging my hands into it. I give Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice a 2 out of 5.